Hey, Divine Ones. I am live here on my personal page. I haven't been on my personal page live in a long time. Um, I go live on my business page every Sunday. So if you are wanting to get more lives from me, just know I go live on my business page every Sunday. Um, but I am just now getting back in the country. I've been on, took a trip. So I literally am just now getting back. And I received, I came back to a lot of messages, a lot of um, emails, and a lot of personal calls from friends and clients asking me this question, basically, why do good people die so young? There was a situation that happened recently with, I guess, while I was out of the country, there was a well-known rapper who was murdered. And I'm not going to say his name in this video because this video is not about him. I don't know him. I don't know his family. I don't know the situation surrounding it well. So I'm not going to be speaking specifically about him. It was just that the question was inspired by his situation. People kept asking about that situation, but I am not going to speak particularly to his situation because, again, I don't know it. I'm going to be speaking to a broader experience. And I want to speak to this question from my perspective as a medium and a channel. So if you're new to me or you're just following me, one of my intuitive abilities is mediumship. I worked as a medium for many, many years and have talked to hundreds of souls on the other side, have helped many, many people communicate with their loved ones on the other side who have passed in all types of ways, whether they passed in old age, whether they passed when they were very young, whether they passed in a very peaceful manner or a very violent manner. I've talked to all types of souls like that. I also work with a higher consciousness called the Beloved. So if you've followed me for a while, you've heard me talk about the Beloved. You may have even seen me or read some channeled material that I've done from the Beloveds. So I communicate with them often as well. So I wanted to say that is coming from that perspective, but I want to talk about why we often, as souls having human experiences, will die young and will die in all different types of ways. So I'm going to be speaking from that perspective. And again, I want to say, this is not specifically about the rapper who just made his transition in a violent manner, because again, I don't know him personally. This may speak to his position, but it may not. But I want to speak about what I've learned from speaking with souls on the other side, and also doing many channel experiences around this. So I've written some notes because I could literally. This topic, we can speak about this topic for a long time, and I don't want to keep you all long. I don't want to be here long talking about this because it is nighttime where I am and I'm winding down. So I have some notes. If you see me looking to the side, I'm reading from my notes so that I can stay on topic here. So the first thing I want to share with you is that as souls having human experiences, when we leave this world, and how we leave this world. So the time we leave and how we leave is always the soul's decision. There is not anything externally that makes that decision other than the soul. So now your human consciousness may not be fully aware of it. You can feel it kind of, and when I get into this a little bit, you'll start to understand how you can start to feel it internally, and the signs internally that you're checking out. But you may not be making it from your biological senses, from your biological mind. You may not be making the decision saying, okay, I'm ready to go from that perspective, but your soul and your energy, that's what the soul really is. The energy will say it's ready to go. And there are many different reasons why it may be ready to go. And I'm going to talk about a few of those here. Why we will check out. And again, specifically why good people die young. right? What we classify as good. So good meaning people who do good things in the world, people who are doing a lot for their communities, people who are, we classify as being so positive. And people that we look at and we say that was a good woman, or that was a good dude, that was just a good person in the world. I want to speak specifically to this. So the first thing why good people die young is a lot of times we perceive somebody as being, a good person and very positive in the world, but they could be good on the outside and inwardly turmoiled on the inside. So again, I want to speak to this. So this is, you can be good on the outside, but inwardly turmoiled on the inside. And I think a lot of us know someone like this. Oh, by the way, before I go into this also, I said I want to speak to this from my perspective as a medium and a channel, but I also want to speak to my perspective about this, as someone who's lost many people in my family and lost many friends young. I've had several family members who were murdered when they were young, when we were young. And when I talk about young, like early 20s. And I've had many friends who died, whether they died from disease or they died in an accident or something like that. So I've had my own journey with asking these questions. So not just talking to souls on the other side, but I had my own questions, which I directly talked with source energy through channeling about, because I questioned this many years ago, my own self. Because the people that died in my life, I perceived as good as well. So going back to number one, you could be good on the outside, but inwardly turmoiled on the inside. So we know many people like this. And as a matter of fact, almost all of us have had this experience ourselves in our own lives, where people may perceive things going well for us on the outside, like we may be doing good in the world, we may be making a lot of money, we may have a smile on our face, we may be, have this great relationship on the outside. People look and say, oh, you have this wonderful partner, you have the house of your dreams, you're making all this money, but internally, you may be really sad because the money that you're making is not how you really want to make it. You may not be doing the job you really wanted to. You may be working a job that you hate and that's stressing you out. The relationship the relationship you're in may look really great on the outside, but when you close those doors, you all are arguing, or you're experiencing violence in the home, or it's not the person you really want to be with. That person doesn't really make you happy. You could be, again, there are a lot of people who on the outside are smiling and they're, saying positive affirmations and everything like that. But internally, they're depressed or they're really sad. And there are countless examples of that. We've had many, many examples of that in our lifetimes, both, in public. There are a lot of people publicly we've seen like that. And also personally, if you make it very personal, there have been times in your life where you've put a face on, where when you went out, you smiled, you may have laughed a little bit, it may look like you were having fun and really enjoying your life and all things were good, but internally that's not the case at all. You don't feel good, internally. You may look good externally, but you don't feel good internally. And so here's the thing, the soul incarnates into this lifetime to experience joy. And also, if you all are joining, by the way, and you're watching and you have questions, please post those questions. I'll respond to those questions during this live. I don't just want to, talk to you. I want to talk with you. But the soul is here. One of the main purposes of incarnating into a human experience is to experience the energy of joy. I often say that we are made of love energy and we are made for love energy. And this is really what you are. As a soul, you're literally the incarnation, the physicalization of love energy. And a part of love, a facet of love, is joy. Joy is actually a part of love. And so when you're not feeling love, when you are disconnected from the energy of yourself and you're disconnected for your reason for being here. And so when you're not enjoying your life for a long time, the soul will make a decision that this life experience is not serving its purpose. It's not serving why you came here. and it will check out. It will decide to leave this life experience. Now, here's another thing to really, if you've been following me, you know this, but if you're new to me, you may not have heard this from me, but from the soul's perspective, death is not a bad thing. Death is not a scary thing. Death is not something to fear. It's not something wrong. As a matter of fact, death is a very blissful experience for the soul. I did a video many years ago that talked about death, the acronym of death, DEATH, meaning divine expansion and total healing. So from the soul's perspective, when you cross over, when you make your transition, when you leave your physical body, you expand into the fullness of who you are. This physical form is not the fullness of you. It can't fit all of you. It's like kind of like an iceberg, right? So the tip of the iceberg is what you see, and that's the biological aspect of yourself. Like what you see right now is the biological aspect of Jerome. That's the tip of the iceberg, right? The biggest part of the iceberg is what you don't see, which is underneath, for the iceberg is underneath the water. That's the largest part of the iceberg. For us, the largest part of us is what we don't see, and it's the soul, and that's really the energy, right? But it's still a part of you. It's the biggest part of you. It's the biggest part of you. As a matter of fact, the biological aspect is less than 5% of your being. Less than 5%. Like over 95% of your being is this spiritual, non-physical, energetic part. So when you cross over into the other side, you expand into the fullness of your soul, and you leave behind all the hurts. You leave behind all your limiting beliefs. You leave behind your race, your gender, your class. You leave behind all of that, and you become the fullness of love. Really, you become the fullness of love energy. You become the fullness of all that is. You become the fullness of source. So from the soul's perspective, dying is not bad. It's kind of like going back home. It's like going back to the natural aspect of yourself. So when you're not enjoying your life experience here, and it's not serving the purpose for why you came here, right? So you're not meeting your intention, your soul's intention to experience joy. And I'm not talking about joy all the time, 100% of the time. I'm talking about the arc of your life, the majority of your life. If you're not enjoying it, if you don't feel alive, if you don't feel fulfilled, if you don't feel if you don't feel like, if you're not having fun and you're not experiencing pleasure, your soul will decide to check out. And if you've heard me talk about this in many ways before, I've talked about that's why a lot of people will manifest diseases. It's not that you're creating a disease. Like, you're not asking for the disease. You're not saying, this is what I want to experience. But the body was created to house the energy of love, particularly the energy of joy. And so when it gets depleted from joy and love, a disease will show up. And it's kind of like the indicator, very much like the fuel indicator in a car, right? So in our car, we have a fuel light that will come on to say your life is low, like your car is running low on the fuel it needs to run well. The same thing happens. Like, illness and disease is literally a divine indicator that shows up to say you are running low on the fuel that you need to be well and to run well and to survive in this life, which is love and joy, right? So sometimes you'll manifest the disease as the way to check out, right? And you still have a choice. You can choose to fuel up, to charge up, to change your lifestyle so that you begin to, be fulfilled. You begin to experience love and joy. You begin to do the things that make you feel most alive. You begin to feel, have fun in your life and pleasure in your life. You always have that choice. But if some way you don't know how to do that, you haven't been taught while you're in this lifetime how to do that, how to make those choices for yourself, how to change your lifestyle so that it nourishes you instead of depletes you, then you'll check out. Because it's too tiring, it's too draining, your life is too depleting. And so your soul will say, we'll try this again later, but this time is not it. It's very much like I got this message before, and I think I've heard another channel say this, as a matter of fact. But I got this directly from my guides, which are called the Beloveds. They likened it to going to a movie theater. So life, you check into this life, and it's kind of like you're going to a movie. You buy a ticket to go see a movie, and you're excited about this movie. You're really excited about it. Like when you buy the ticket, you're really excited about it. You want to have fun. You're wanting to watch and see what all goes on. You're really excited about the all the different possibilities that this movie has. You want to have it, and then you get in the theater. You sit down. You got your popcorn. You got your drink. You may be sitting there with some of your friends. You go to this movie with some of your friends, and you got your popcorn. You got your drink. You're sitting there, and all of a sudden, you really don't enjoy this movie. It's not making you laugh. The plot sucks to you. The plot sucks to you. Excuse me. It may be too horrifying to you, and you're not into horror. Whatever. You don't like the actors. Whatever it is, you do not like this movie. There's nothing about this movie that you like. And you're trying to enjoy it, you're trying to find something, and you're not liking it. And so you look to your friends and you kind of say, hey, I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna go. You all continue to watch because you're enjoying it. I'm not. I'm just gonna check out, and I'll see you all later when you come out, and maybe I'll go see another movie another time. Right? It's very much from the soul's perspective and from the non-physical, the other side's perspective. It's just like that. Like you wouldn't judge your friend and say your friend failed at seeing the movie, or that because they didn't want to watch it anymore, something was wrong with them, or that they failed at watching a movie. They didn't. It was just this movie no longer really served. They had an idea about it. They got here. It didn't serve, what they wanted. And so they are going to check out, and they'll see another movie another time. It's very much like that. And so, and I've talked to many souls who said it was very much like that as well. It's very much like that to them. It's just like checking out, right? So, somebody says it's don't forget sneaking in the candy. Yeah, very much like you've got the candy in the movie theater, you got your stuff, and then you get there and, you're not enjoying it. So, so if you could be outwardly good. So this is number one. So you could be outwardly good, meaning you're doing all these good things in the world. You're perceived good things by other people, right? You're a nice person. You're positive, saying all the affirmations, but internally, you're turmoiled. And when I had my first near-death experience in 2004, that explained my life to the T. On the outside, I had a good job. I had just graduated from college with a great degree. I had just moved to a new city. A lot of people said I was attractive. I, had friends. I had on the outs, and I was very positive. As a matter of fact, I worked as a counselor, and so in my office, there were all these affirmations. I was teaching spirituality a little bit at that time. If you talk to me, I was always uplifting. I always had something positive to say. I always had some type of inspirational or affirmational thing that encouraged people. But internally, I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame around my sexuality. I was suppressing my spirituality. I was suppressing my intuition and my psychic gifts for fear that, I would be judged and rejected and abandoned for them. Because of my upbringing as a traditional Christian. I felt bad about my body. I didn't feel, even though a lot of people, told me I was attractive and all that, I didn't feel attractive. I didn't feel that way. Even though on the outside I had a good job, it wasn't what I really wanted to do with my life. It wasn't what I dreamed about doing. And it made me feel suppressed and oppressed at times. And so I was very inwardly turmoiled and had been that way for years. And so disease showed up for me, and not just disease, but death showed up for me. Yes, I see Yarday commenting, yes, the answer to your question is yes. So so that experience, outwardly I was good, but inwardly I was turmoiled, and my soul was running low on the fuel that I needed, which was love and joy, and I did not feel love and joy in my life anywhere. And so it manifested. Several diseases showed up, and I had a near-death experience in which I'm going to talk about the near-death experience here in another point. I'm going to move through another point here in just a second. But I had a near-death experience in which I was basically told, like, the way I was living my life was not why I was here, and it was not nourishing me. It was not fueling me. It was not meeting the intention for why my soul came. And I made a choice that so I had a choice whether or not to go or to stay. And again, I want to reiterate, every time we pass, every time somebody transitions, their soul is the one that made the choice to do so. Again, you may not have made it from this portion of you, right? But you can feel it internally, right? I could feel, like, here's another thing. You either feel alive or you don't. Right. And if you really get in tune with how you feel, you'll know, do I feel alive? Do I feel like I am really living and I am enjoying life? Or do I feel internally like I'm dying? Like my life makes me feel like I'm dying. And that's how I felt. My life felt, and that's not, by the way, you guys, that feeling is not random. That is divine guidance. It's trying to tell you something, that the way you're living your life is not why you're here, and you're slowly making the decision to check out. When you feel like you're just like your life is sucking the way your lifestyle is sucking the life out of you, it literally is. It's sucking life force energy out of you. So number one, you could be good on the outside, but inwardly turmoiled. And if you stay inwardly turmoiled, not just inwardly turmoiled for a few days, like if you're just inwardly turmoiled for a few days, a few weeks, your soul's just not going to check out. Like, this is a prolonged feeling. You have to be prolonged. It has to go for a while, right? Your soul gives you a long time to try and right the ship, if you will. But if you feel inwardly turmoiled for a long time, if you feel drained or depleted, you feel super tired of your life, you feel depressed for a long time, your soul will start to make the decision to check out a lot of times. And so and a lot of you are saying, some of you felt that way, very heavy. Yeah, it feels heavy. It feels oppressive sometimes. It feels draining. You feel really tired. And again, it's about living. You're here for joy. You're supposed to live a life based on your passions, what you enjoy, what fulfills you, what nourishes you. Not just the type of work you do, but the type of relationships you have, the type of friendships you have, your home, where you live, all of that. So that's number one. So if you're good on the outside but inwardly turmoiled on the inside, and you stay that way for a long time, your soul will make a decision to check out, because that's not the life that you were here to live. And so it will just kind of say, okay, if we can't right this ship, then we'll just check out and try again, because that's what the soul does. It will just try another life, right? And again, you don't die. Like, that's another misperception we have in our culture. There's no end to you. You are an eternal being. You are an eternal being that is constantly expanding, that is constantly trying new experiences, that is constantly living life. And so if this particular lifetime doesn't breathe joy through you, and it doesn't breathe joy through you in a very prolonged way, then you will make the decision to check out. So that's number one. So the second way is, and again, if you're just joining, I have notes, because I can talk about this for a whole weekend. I'll probably, in some future, I may write a book about this or do some type of weekend retreat about it. But I don't want to hold you off for a whole weekend. So I have some notes here just to kind of highlight the main points to this topic about why good people die so young. So the other thing I want to say is, so I said again, and you'll hear me reiterate this at every point, that no matter what your death is, no matter how you die or when you die, your soul always chooses it. It chooses when to go, and there is no external force. There is nothing outside of the soul that is making this decision. There's nothing in the universe that makes, that imposes its will upon you. You are the one, your soul is the one making that makes all the decisions, basically, your energy and your soul. So it makes the decision when it's ready, when it's time, when you go. So you only go when you're ready to go, and you only go how your soul makes the decision. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So number two I want to talk about is you go when being in your spiritual form, and remember in the beginning I said death means divine expansion and total healing. When you pass over into the other side, you expand into the fullness of what you are, which is the soul, which is really a part, which is God, which is source energy, which is all it is. You expand into all of that. And so a lot of reasons people will check out is because the way they can most serve their intention or their purpose here, like how they wanted to serve the planet, or how they wanted to help others, or things they wanted to understand, or how they wanted to affect the world. The way that they can most do that, is in their spiritual form. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this because this is kind of deep and there's a lot to this. But there's a lot of people who do this. There's a lot of souls who will check out because they can communicate to more people as a soul. Because as a soul, you're not limited to, like me. I can't speak to, I can't influence or inspire or connect with 1,000 people at one time. Right? Unless I'm speaking on the stage to 1,000 people at one time about something. But as a soul, you're not limited by time and space. So like the energy of my grandmother who passed can be talking to me and inspiring me about something right now, as well as talking to my mother who doesn't live here, who doesn't live with me, as well as talking to my uncle who lives in California, as well as talking to my other cousin who's her other grandchild who lives in Washington, Washington State, as well as talking to black women as a whole, or women as a whole, or whatever. A lot of times, if a soul has a big mission and they cannot figure out a way while they're in physical form to engage in that mission, or to meet that mission, or to satisfy that mission and being a big mission, meaning they are here to inspire and touch the lives of many, right? A lot of times they will transition. They'll make the decision to transition so they can continue to do it on that side where they have no limits, where they are not limited. So for example, here's a few people who have done something like that. So Wayne Dyer passed not a few years ago, and for a lot of people it was very unexpected. He had healed his body of a disease, and his autopsy had proven that he had healed his body of this terminal disease. So it wasn't that took him out, and so for a lot of people were very surprised. But there have been a lot of people who have reported that Wayne Dyer's spirit, that his soul has come to them and it has inspired them to do something. Like Anita Moorjani is one of the big authors, one of the big Hay House authors and spiritual teachers now, whose work is inspiring millions across the world. She's one of the people who said he's spoken to her and has inspired her work and has communicated to her since his passing. And they were friends before he passed. And she says now he speaks to her even more. There's been a lot of people who have been inspired by him. Another person is Jerry Hicks. If you know Abraham Hicks, the channel Esther Hicks, her husband Jerry was very instrumental in their work. And he passed several years ago. And for a lot of people, he passed unexpectedly. He was very healthy before that, and he died of the illness. And a lot of people were confused, and it's the same thing. And he has spoken to Esther directly, and even come through sometimes when she's channeled Abraham, and spoken directly about, from that perspective, from his soul's perspective, he had a lot of questions. He wanted to know a lot about the universe, and he wanted to help people understand the universe more. And from that perspective, he's able to serve more people. Because also from the soul's perspective, you're also able to serve as a spirit guide for several people. We think there's just one spirit guide for someone, but oftentimes a spirit guide will serve many people. And so Jerry is doing that. Another person is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His passing, think about how many people he inspired, especially people of color. He inspired after his passing. Just think about how many people he inspired during his life. And then he inspired probably 10 times that since his passing. Right. And so not just his physical work that he's done, but also, his energy work. So a lot of times they'll do that. They will cross over. Someone will make a decision and they will pass early, even very young. There was another person I talked to. This was a client I had many years ago, who her son was, and I won't give a name because these people are well known, but her son passed very young. He was very bright when he was here. He had written books. He had written books of poetry. He had been on TV, all of this. And her son passed when he was very young. And a lot of people, to the public, it was a tragedy. But to her, it was, she grieved, and it was a loss for her. But she got so much more from her connection with him when he passed. She still communicated with him. And as a medium, this is something I tell people all the time. Your communication and your relationship with the person doesn't end when they pass, because they're not gone. We're not taught in our cultures and our societies how to communicate and to communicate with our loved ones who have gone on. But many indigenous cultures, and it's just not even, you don't even have to go to indigenous cultures, really, even people who are mediums and even people who aren't mediums have had experiences where they communicate with their loved ones who have gone on almost the same as if they're still here. The type of communication you have with them is slightly different because they're in their fullest form. So they don't have some of the limitations that they had, limiting beliefs that they had, or the fears that they had, or all of that. They leave all of that behind when they cross over. So it's more joyous, it's more expansive, it's more loving, your communication and relationship with them. I have a communication with a few of the people that have passed on that have been in my life. In particular, you've heard me talk about my grandmother. My grandmother talks to me all the time, and my grandmother passed over 10 years ago. And she speaks to me a lot, especially when I'm in the kitchen, because that was one of her favorite places in the home. So whenever I go in the kitchen, I always hear my grandmother. She always has a conversation with me about something, and she's guided me. A lot of decisions I've made in my life has been from conversations I've had with my grandmother, all of that. So just because somebody transitions over to the other side doesn't mean that they're gone, or that your communication with them or your relationship with them has to end. It can continue, and it can even be bigger than it was when they were here. Now, again, just to give you a little bit of this, and I've done a video on this before, so if you want to look at this, you can find this on my YouTube video. I think it was about communicating with your loved ones on the other side. I think that was the title. But you open the portal of communication with a loved one when you're on the other, who crossed over to the other side, more when you're no longer grieving, because they are at a very high energy now. They've become the fullness of their soul. When they cross over, they become the full energy of themselves. And I've said that before in this video several times, but they become the full energy. So they are at a very high vibration. And when you're grieving and you're experiencing loss, you are at a very low vibration. And it's okay. That's okay. That's natural. That's the natural expression of experiencing the loss of a loved one, right? It's a natural experience. But your vibration lowers when you grieve. And so there's this kind of chasm between where they are and where you are. And so that chasm has to close. It doesn't have to be completely equal, but it's got to close dramatically before you begin to communicate with them on a higher, on a more frequent basis and on a clearer basis. A lot of times when they first die, and I see somebody commenting here in the comments here, when they first cross over, they'll come to you in your dreams because that's the easiest way to communicate with you. Especially because when you're awake, you're grieving them. And so your vibration is not high enough to meet with them because they can't come down. So when you cross over to the other side, you can't bring your energy down because you are literally now, you're literally in pure positive energy. You're in pure positive high vibration. So you can't come down from that. Right? We come down from that when we become physical. That's part of the experience of being physical. Being physical and human is just a slightly lower vibration. And you can experience lower vibrations when you're human. So when you're grieving, again, there's too much of a gap between where their vibration and your vibration. And so when you allow yourself to go through the grieving process and you kind of lighten your vibration up a little bit, and that's when you can start to communicate with them on a more frequent basis. So anyway, I've gone too far into some stuff that I didn't want to, that I wasn't intending to go to, but it's good information for you on this topic. So yes, so this particular thing is, so number 2 is, a lot of times people will die young because in order to serve their purpose, in order to fulfill their mission or to affect or inspire a greater amount of people, they weren't able to figure that out while they were human, so they can do that when they're in spiritual form. So so they will choose sometimes to go in that way. So their soul will make a decision, hey, I think we need to check out so that we can fulfill this part of our mission. And they will check out early. What we perceive as early. For them, again, is on time, is exactly when they wanted to go. But for us, we'll perceive it as being early because they may be young and we don't understand. But that's one of the reasons why they do that. Also, a lot of times they may have fulfilled, so number 3 is they may have fulfilled their mission for being here. So one of the things, which is a false premise that we have, is that everyone's life is supposed to follow a certain arc of length, meaning that you're born and you're supposed to live till you're 90 and then you die, right? And we have this belief system in our heads, which is why we experience so much suffering when people pass. It's one of the reasons we experience a lot of suffering. There's a difference between grieving a loss to somebody, because even though I have a very different understanding of death now, since my near-death experience and my intuitive gifts has opened up, and I've talked to many souls on the other side. I know that death is not an end. I know it's not a bad thing. And all of that. So I know it's a blissful experience. Even though I understand that, and I know that the soul continues on, and I communicate to souls that have continued on, I still experience grieving when someone that I love and someone that's close to me passes. Now, I don't experience deep, deep mourning and suffering because, again, I don't believe the person is gone. I don't believe that something bad happened to them. I know there's no hell. That's another conversation. There's only love. There's only light. There's only heaven. And so I know that. I have had many experiences that no matter what kind of evidence, quote unquote, you bring to me, you can't make me understand anything different because I have too much experience with it to know anything different than what I know. So I don't experience suffering when somebody dies, but I do experience grieving. So even though I grieve, so you can grieve, you just don't suffer, right? And I forgot why I initially said that. My train of thought was somewhere. So anyway, let me go on to this other way. So they may complete what their mission was, right? So that's number 3. They may complete why they came here. So they may have come here to for their light to burn very bright, very fast, right? Oh, okay. So again, we think that you're supposed to have a certain amount of years. And that's not the way the soul views things. The soul is more about the experience, right? So not so much years, because you can live a long time and be suffering and be unhappy and be unfulfilled and not be in alignment with who you really are. And that's not a blissful experience. You can come, there are so many souls who come here and they have a fucking blast right away and their lights burn bright. They are in alignment with who they are. They are affecting a lot of people. Or even not just a lot of people. I don't want to get this message out there that every soul has come to affect a lot of people, because that's not true. Sometimes the soul comes to just affect one person or just their family. But some people are here to affect millions. Some people are here to affect thousands. Some people are here to affect hundreds. Some people are here to affect tens. Some people are here to affect less than 10. So, so the soul, right, if it comes and it has this experience, it experiences a lot of joy. It experiences a lot of it experiences a lot of love. It has really fulfilling relationships. It has fun. A lot of times it will say, oh yes, that was great. I'm ready to go to the next experience. A lot of times when I've talked to people's children who have passed, so when I used to do a lot of mediumship readings, I don't do a lot of mediumship readings anymore. My work is really more on helping people heal and transform their lives. But when I used to do I solely used to work as a medium, I talked to a lot of people whose children passed, whose children, some of them who passed very young, like when they were like 6 or younger than that, or even when they were like teenagers. And they would ask me a lot of times, why was that the case? And a lot of times those kids were like, hey, I did what I came to do. I had a good time. I had a blast. And I checked out and I was ready to go to the next experience. Also, sometimes when a soul decides to manifest here on the earth, it has a conversation with, again, you come with kind of a soul family. Like, so you come in with kind of some people that you know that you want to interact with, or that your life experience is going to affect in a way. And so you all will have this kind of conversation and you'll say, hey, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do this, and this is going to help you do this, right? I'm going to burn really bright, and that's going to help you expand and understand your worthiness more, or understand your connection to everybody else, or understand love more, or be loving to others more. And so they'll all understand that on a soul level. And so that soul's exiting of the world actually helps the other people around them expand and grow in some type of way. So that soul will make the decision to check out to early, because it serves the greater picture of other people. And we're all connected. So again, we're all one. We really are all one, even though we're having an experience, a temporary experience of separation, right? Because you think you're in your home watching me and I'm over here, speaking, and we're having a separate experience. But in reality, we're connected, we're one. And how I live my life affects you, and how you live your life affects me. We're literally, and when you cross over, you see that a lot of people who've had near-death experiences talk about seeing the interconnection of all of us, and how our lives all affect each other, and our decisions all affect each other. And so a lot of times people will, will do that. I have a comment here I want to read to you. Suleiman says, "You brought my boy to me less than a month after he passed away. Now, after 4 years, I communicate with him energetically. I've seen him once." So this was a client of mine that I worked with before, when I was doing mediumship work. Suleiman, I'm really glad to hear that. I'm so glad. Again, he was not leaving you, and you're actually a perfect example of this, because although his passing was painful, and although his passing was unexpected for you in a way, look how much you've grown because of it. Look how much you've expanded. Look how much you've understood about the universe. Look how much you've changed your life so that you're more nourishing and more respectful and more honoring of yourself because of that, right? And a lot of times our loved ones will do that. They will choose to go early because it helps you, because it helps the people around them grow. And again, initially there's going to be grieving, but a lot of times people wake up when someone passes. It serves as part of their spiritual awakening, or it serves to help them change from living a life of pain or suffering or a life that drains and depletes them to one that nourishes them, a loving one that is in alignment with who they really are. Death, a lot of times someone's death can be of great service to you. And a lot of times, again, the soul knows that, and they will choose to go to help you. They will do that. Like, we honor each other and we serve each other in so many different ways. We think we just serve each other with our hands and by what we do, and by like our physical actions, but you serve yourself. We serve each other with our energy. We serve each other on a soul level, even more than you understand. And thank you, Suleiman. You almost made me cry there. He says, he brought me to you. It wasn't a coincidence. Much, much respect, much, much love, and vice versa. So yes, so that's another one. So that's the soul. A lot of times when they chose what they came here to do, when they've done what they came here to do, they will leave. And we think you only are here, you've only done what you come here to do when you've lived 80 years, but sometimes you've done what you came here to do when you've lived 5 years, when you've lived 5 months, right? So, and sometimes your death is part of the death that you have, is part of what you came here to do. Your death may serve the world in some way. It may serve the community, your community, or your family in some way. So example, again, I said this before, look at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His death served the world almost more than his life. It made the world rethink some things. It made African Americans really get serious about living a humane life, right? Really, really getting our rights, and really about the equality and all of that. Malcolm X, I mean, there's many examples of how someone's death has pushed the world forward in some way, or pushed somebody's family forward in some way, or pushed their lover or their parent or their sibling forward in some way. And that's not a coincidence. That is an intention. That is a divine intention for both souls have this kind of understanding that this is going to happen. So that's a part of it. And 1 second, let me look at my notes here. Oh yeah, I want to speak about this as well. So another part of this is although the death may look painful to you, a lot of times when somebody goes and they're deciding to go, it's not painful to them. Even though they may have been murdered, even though they may have gotten in a horrific accident, a lot of times their crossing over is very quick. It's quick, right? And so they don't experience the pain that you think, right? They don't experience it because, again, especially if if they have come what they've come to do, they will do that. Now, this is leading me into another part that I want to talk about, which is why, so I said they choose when and they choose how. So again, why would they choose? So I know probably some of you are having this question about like, okay, so if we choose you're getting the part about we choose when we go, but you're like, okay, but why would somebody choose to go and murder? Why would somebody choose to go violently? So there are several reasons for that too. So a lot of times the murder will go like a violent something will happen so here's the thing. Some people will choose to go in something quick, in a quick way, like an accident, because they don't want to draw out the suffering of their loved ones. So again, from the soul's perspective, the soul sees everything. The soul is not just channeled into your small viewpoint. The soul is connected to everybody. So it knows what will most affect your mother, your brother, your lover, your teacher, your family, your community. It knows all of that. It knows because it's part of all of them. So it knows, like, okay, if you go in an illness, if this person goes in an illness, these people aren't going to be able to handle that. They're going to experience a vast amount of suffering. Or you may go in an illness because it gets so, well, let me stay with this first. So oftentimes we'll go in an accident or some type of quick violent thing. Well, let me do an accident first. You'll go in an accident because it's quick, and the people around you will experience mourning, but they won't experience a long, drawn out suffering. Like, they may not have the finances to help you if you're sick. So they would suffer financially and emotionally with it. A lot of times people are so connected energetically that if you experience the illness, they will experience the illness as well, right? Because they're empathically connected to you like that. So the soul knows it doesn't want that the best way for you to check out will be an accident, because that will be quick and none of that other stuff will happen for them. It also may say, again, going back to what I said before, the accident the way you go may wake the other people up. It may serve to wake people up. So if you go at the hand of some violent end, like a murder or something, it may help you forgive. It may help you awaken to your purpose of helping people get out of violence. It may help you awaken to your purpose for, like, getting justice for a certain community or for certain people. A lot of, like, think about Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, right? Think about how that was formed, and think about the good that's done in the world. Think about all the organizations that were formed to end violence in communities because they lost loved ones at the form of violence. Like, it's no coincidence, right? It's no coincidence that this has happened, and these events inspired these people to do that. So how we die often we'll choose because it inspires the people around us into stepping more into their soul's purpose, or into a service of humanity that moves the world closer to love, because that's why we're all here, is to experience love. So it moves us closer into love. The other thing, so that's one reason why you might choose an accident. The same kind of thing happens why you may go into murder. Now, there's a whole other issue why you may be murdered. I don't want to do that in this video. I'll talk about it in another later. But some of the why you go in violent ways is, again, that way may help wake up people and may help serve people. And a lot of times again, we think that your wake up call needs to be like this, sugars and spice and everything nice. But a lot of times your wake up call has to be chaotic, and it has to be very painful, because that's the only way you're going to listen. So I know for me, disease was a wake up call for me, right? That was a wake up call. That was the only way I was going to listen. I am so grateful for it today. I am so grateful for it, because it was the wake up call that I listened to. And it wasn't like my soul wasn't trying to get my attention many times before that, but it was the wake up call that I listened to, right? It was the one that finally got my attention. Sometimes something like that, it takes something horrific or tragic or very painful to wake us up. And so a lot of times the soul will choose that way to exit, because it will help wake people up, because it knows that will help wake the people up. And disease, one of the reasons why people will choose illness or disease to check out is because that way it gives the people time in their lives. So if the soul knows that if this person checks out in a very fast way, like if they just die overnight, or they get in an accident, or they get murdered or something like that, that the people that are in their circle aren't going to be able to handle that very well, or they weren't going to be able. They'll suffer even more. They'll suffer very deeply, and it may really negatively affect them, because again, the soul sees all possibilities and it sees how those possibilities affect the thread of you. So if it sees that, a lot of times they'll choose an illness, because an illness gives people time to prepare themselves for your passing. So their mourning isn't as deep. An illness will give them time to sometimes prepare their lives for your passing, because your absence may affect their money, it may affect their family, it may affect where they live. And so when you have an illness, that kind of gives them some time to prepare for that. So they may choose, sometimes a person may die young, but they may die young of an illness, because that illness allows people the time they need to prepare for that. Also, a lot of time, illness brings people in closer. It makes the families work together. It makes families, work through some issues so they can help, so they can be present. It makes people talk a lot of times, like they'll share things to someone who is ill. They'll listen and hear. So sometimes you'll choose an illness to check out. A young someone who's about to go, a soul who's about to transition will choose an illness because of that. The soul will choose the illness. Again, you don't choose it from kind of up here. The main way you choose illness, number one, is when you're low on, because illness is the indicator that you're low on the fuel you need, which I talked about before, which is love, energy, enjoy energy. That's the number one kind of way. But there's another way, when soul has, especially if a soul has done what they came here to do, or they're ready to see the next experience. They want to cross over so they can, help the world in a bigger way from that broader perspective. They'll choose an illness so that as the illness as the vessel or the vehicle that takes them, into the other side, because it allows the people in their life, their loved ones in their circle, the time that they need to prepare themselves for their absence. So, So the last thing I want to say here, and again, if you have a question about anything, I see a lot of you all's great comments, but if you have a question, please put it in the comments, because after this last one, I'm going to just take questions for a minute and we'll probably end the video. But the next thing is to understand, and I've said this several times during the video, and I said I would mention it several times because it's very important to know. We don't get this understanding in our cultures. We don't talk about this in our institutions. And so we view death in a very scary way. And it's just not true. But there's always a moment of choice for the soul. Even in what looks like death, they still have a moment whether they want to choose to continue living or they want to choose to just fully cross over. If you hear a lot of stories about people who have had near-death experience where they've actually died. So biologically they died, right? So they were on the hospital bed and they died, or they not just left it, had an out-of-body experience, but their body literally died and they went over into the other side. A lot of them, almost all of the people that I know that have had a near-death experience had this point where they came to the light. A lot of them will describe to you there's this kind of point, and many people see it differently. They experience this point differently. So some people will see it as a doorway. Some people just feel it. They'll say they just feel it energetically. They were at this point where they couldn't, go any further. Some people will experience it as a tunnel. Some people experience it many different ways. But if there's a point that you come to where you know that if you cross this point, you cannot go back. And usually when you get to that point, there's a conversation. Either there's a loved one that's there with you who's crossed over before. So like for me, it may be my grandmother or my grandfather, or I have many people who've crossed over. I don't know who's going to meet me at that point. But, it may be your mother, if your mother's gone, or your parent, or your loved one, your lover, a husband or wife or somebody like that. But there's somebody who's crossed over that that usually meets you at that point. And at that point, they have a conversation with you and they say pretty much, you have a knowing either, and the conversation isn't audible, by the way. on the other side, you don't have, you're not physical, you're not biological. So you don't make, although you have it, you have the vision of a body, you don't have a physical body. So you can't make sound. So you communicate energetically and, oh my God, I forgot the word. Telepathically, right? And you'll know that if you go beyond this point, they'll tell you pretty much, if you go beyond this point, you can't turn back. And do you want to go beyond this point or do you not? And also you usually have a conversation about, you have more, like you still have more that you want to do, meaning your soul still has some intentions, right? Not obligations or responsibilities, but intent, because the soul doesn't operate like that. It doesn't operate in obligations and responsibilities. It operates in desire and intention. So you have some desires or intentions that you still want to fulfill in this lifetime. So do you want to, if you go across this threshold, you're going to cross over it back into the fullness of yourself, and you won't fulfill those desires and intentions in this lifetime. Or you'll know you've done everything, you've fulfilled your desires and intentions, you can cross, there's nothing else that you said you wanted to do. But still, you can still continue this life or not. And the soul will make the decision. Your soul will make the decision in that moment, whether or not you want to continue or not. And again, you make it from this place of love. And a lot of people will say that decision is very hard. Some people have said that they came back because they saw how their passing would affect. Like if I mentioned in Morjani, you really should look at her. If you're not familiar with her, go listen to her story. She had died from stage 4 cancer and had a near-death experience and crossed over to the other side and had a beautiful experience. And she talks a lot about this particular moment because she had a conversation with her father, and she saw how if she decided she did not want to come back, it was beautiful. But she got to see that if she died in that moment, how it would affect her husband, how it would affect her mother, how it would affect her brother, and it would have affected them very negatively. So she decided to come back, and she got to see a little bit about how her life would, when she came back, how she would be able to affect the world if she came back. So she decided to come back. But again, you have a choice. This is what free will is all about. You always have the choice. So the soul makes the choice. It makes the choice on whether or not, even if, somebody shoots you, your soul goes over to the other side and you go to this point and you have a choice. You don't just get pushed over against your will. If you don't want to go, if you're not ready to transition over into the other side, the soul does not go. Again, there's nothing externally making you do anything. There's no external force. There's only an internal force, because you are the incarnation of source energy, of God. You are the incarnation of it. And so you get to choose, am I ready to go or not? And you get to kind of view how you're going, your passing will affect the people in your life. And based upon what you see and what you're ready for, you make the decision. Even still, you can still come back. Somebody can come. People have come back from, being shot in the head. People come back from their body being ravished with illness and the doctor saying there's no way. People have come back, and they have come back and been well. So you still get to choose. There's always the choice. And again, if somebody chooses to pass, it doesn't mean they failed. Again, think about all the other things I've said in the beginning about why people choose to make their transition. You don't fail. And death is not a punishment, right? Death is beautiful. Now, you don't want to go before, you don't want to rush there and try to get there because you're tired of living. Life is not a punishment either. Life is a reward. You just have to figure out how to live a life that fulfills you and that nourishes you and that makes you feel alive, because that's why you came here. But that's why good people die young. That's why they often die young. Again, this conversation was not about the rapper who transitioned early, because again, I don't know him personally. I don't know his family. I haven't tuned into him energetically or spiritually, so I have not talked to him. I do not know anything about that. So I'm not speaking to him at all, his experience at all. But I'm doing this because I got so many questions about this, and I wanted to shed some light on this from um, an example. So here's a beautiful question, and I've done a video on this particular question as well. So if you want to look at my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Jerome Braggs, you can see me answer this question in more detail, but I am going to speak to this again here. So Paula is asking, what happens with suicide? So if you missed the first thing that I said, which is people can look good out externally, but be internally turmoiled. You could be inwardly turmoiled. And so from the soul's perspective, and again, I've talked to hundreds of souls, and I've talked to many people's souls and people's loved ones who crossed over, who committed suicide. And here's one thing, there's a few things I want to say about this. Number one, there is no judgment on the other side. When you get to the other side, there's what's called a life review, and you get to look at all of the life decisions that you made, the effects they had on you, the effects they had on the people around you. Also, you get to see the life decisions that you didn't make, like the risk you didn't take, or what would have happened if you would have made a different choice. And with suicide, what ends up happening, there's understanding. So you cross the other side, you cross over into the realm of unconditional love. There is no punishment, there is no judgment, there is understanding. So what happens is you receive and understand, like and this is what a lot of those souls have told me, is they felt this embrace of love around them because Source understood from the understanding that they had, meaning the belief systems they had about themselves, what they understood about the world, and the tools that they had available to them at that time. The Source understands why you made that choice. It understands. It's kind of like the same thing that happens. This is why understanding is the key to forgiveness. So if somebody like does something that's hurtful to you, and you really look at them from understanding what their beliefs are, what their consciousness is at this level, what tools they have, what kind of hurt they have in their lives, like what pains they have, you may understand why they did what they did. It doesn't make it right for you, right? It doesn't make it something that you want to invite more of, but you understand. You understand why hurt people, right? And from that understanding, there's no vitriol. There's no revenge wanted. There's just compassion. And it's the same thing that happens with suicide. There's just compassion and understanding that's offered because, okay, you couldn't figure out, you weren't given the tools to figure out how to change your life, and you weren't given the understanding to understand who you really were. And you may have been experiencing a lot of trauma, and you were disconnected from the truth of who you were. And from all of that, we can understand why you made this choice. It may not have been the most loving choice for you, or the most empowered choice, but we understand you were trying the best that you knew how to do, and this was the best you knew how to do in the moment with what you had. So there is no judgment. There is no punishment, by the way. You only receive love on the other side. You only receive love. You only receive love. You only receive love on the other side. So the same with suicide. If a person is inwardly turmoiled and they are very disconnected from love, the experience of love and joy, their life has not been fueling them with that, and they can't figure out how to stop the pain because you need love and joy. It's one of your needs. Just like you need food, just like you need water, just like you need sleep, you actually need love to feel loved and to feel joy. Just like that. And just like if you don't eat, if you don't sleep, you have, there's detrimental effects to your being. There's detrimental effects to your being that happen when you don't feel love and you don't feel joy. One of the effects is that you become depressed and you have deep emotional pain. And if you don't know how to heal that pain, and you've tried, to soothe it in some way, and it's not working, because soothing it and healing it are two different things. Soothing it is a temporary fix. Healing it is a permanent fix. And so if you don't know how to heal it, and you're not receiving the tools to heal it. And that pain just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so a lot of times people will decide to commit suicide to end the pain because they don't know how to heal it. And when you go over to the other side, you just receive understanding. They understand, the source understands you didn't know how to heal the pain. And you receive love and you become the fullness of love, just like everybody else. This is something that's kind of hard for a lot of people to understand because of our culture teaches us very differently, not just about suicide, but about criminals and people who have done quote unquote bad things in the world. They have the same experience. They get to see what choices they made, how it affected their life, how it affected the lives of other people. They get to see, the pain they may have caused, but they also receive the same understanding and they also receive love. So that being said, I don't see any more questions. I thank you all for attending this tonight. I just wanted to jump on. Again, I've been out of the country. I just got back in and I just had gotten a barrage of inboxes and emails about this question. Why do we as souls, especially who are doing good things in the world, why do we die young? This was inspired by, the question was inspired by the death of a rapper that just died a few days ago. And he was doing a lot of good things in the world. He was doing a lot of beautiful things and preparing to do even more beautiful things in the world. And people were very confused by it. And I'm not speaking to his life specifically, which is why I didn't name him in this video. I'm speaking to the general populace. But this is why some of the reasons why good people die young. Again, I can speak there's a lot more to talk about with this. I can do a whole weekend retreat on this. But this is why, if this video helped you or will help somebody else, please share it. Please share it with someone who will help. There's one more question before I get out of here. Carol asked, do I think if someone tells you they'd rather die than live, they're beginning to prepare those around them? So what they are doing is giving you a signal that the life that they're living is not nourishing them, is not meeting their need for love and joy, and is not making them feel connected to who they really are. Now, you always have a choice in every moment. You always have a choice. So in that moment, the more you feel like you're not alive, right? The more you feel like life is not worth living, because they're telling you they're disconnected from their reason for living life. And so the more you get disconnected for a reason for living, the more you're going to start checking out. The more your soul is going to start the process of dying. But that person does not have to die. The person can live, just like me. Just like me. I, in 2004, January 1st, was given 7 days to live. And if you follow me, I'm not going to go into my whole story because I have you can go to my page, my business page, which is facebook.com/Jerome, Coach Jerome Braggs, facebook.com/Coach Jerome Braggs. You can find out about it. You can look at my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Jerome Braggs. You can hear my story. I talk about it a lot. I talk about it all the time in detail. So I'm not going to go in detail here. But when I was dying, I had lived on the outside. I had a good job. I had friends. I looked good to people. But I was inwardly turmoiled. I wasn't living the life I wanted to live. My life didn't taste good to me. I didn't feel alive. And I hadn't been feeling that for a long time. And so my soul was checking out. But I had a choice. On my deathbed, I was given a choice of whether I was going to come back and do what it took, which was to love myself, to do the work of loving myself, to survive, or I was going to transition. And I made the choice to survive and to live and to thrive. So that person has a choice. So if someone says to you that, if they say to you, I'd rather die than live, ask them, instead of saying what's wrong with you, ask them what really matters to them. Ask them, what don't they like about their life? And what kind of life would they like to live instead? and help them see how they can begin, what steps they can take to begin to live that life, or what steps they can begin to take so that they can be engaged in what matters to them more of the time than what doesn't matter to them, what drains and depletes them, what makes them feel, that's what depression is a signal. It's not a dysfunction or it's not a malfunction. It's not a signal of something being wrong with you. It's a signal of something being missing from you. Depression is what arises in us when we're living a life that is missing the fulfillment and joy and love that we came for. It's missing the things that really matter to us. It may be missing the connections, like we don't have fulfilling connections. We don't have a sense of tribe. It may be missing, we're not doing work that we're really passionate about and that fulfills us. It may be missing, we're not having fun. Like we don't live in a place, the environment that we're in is not fun for us to live in. It's not what we really want. It may be, several things. We don't feel free. We don't feel like we can be ourselves. We feel bondage and oppressed. So maybe there's something, maybe our sexuality, we fear we can't really fully be, our sexuality. We can't be our identity, right? Some aspects of our personality. We may be weird. We may believe certain different things, and our environment doesn't make us feel safe to express and engage in that. So you want to ask the person what really matters to them. To really sit down and have an honest conversation, not what's wrong with them. We need to get that question out of, just throw it in the trash because it doesn't apply anywhere. There's nothing wrong with them. There's something missing from them. There's something they need. There's a need that's not being met. And so ask her that and try to see what her needs are that are not being met and try to help her see how to meet her needs and watch how her life shifts. Because when our needs are being met and we start to live a life that's nourishing us, then we have a reason for living. We want to be here. We want to stay here. People who are having fun and are engaged in their passions and have a good sense of tribe and community and connection, they love life. They want to experience it. They can't wait to live their life. They can't wait to wake up in the morning. It's when we start to get devout of those things, when we start to get disconnected from our tribe, when we start to get disconnected from our passions, and we start to do work that stresses and drains us, when we don't have joy in our lives and we don't have fulfilling connections, that's when we start to feel like, we start to feel less alive and less like life is not worth living. And that's not, but that's not that it can't be worth living. It just means we need to change our lifestyle. We need to change it. So help them see how to change it. So, all right, you all. I spent probably almost an hour and a half to 2 hours. This is way past what I was intending to do. So I am going to check out. I love you all. Thank you, Jennifer, for the love. Thank you, Carol, for you're saying yes, she's definitely feeling the disconnection. Yes, it's such a great life. And if she's not experiencing it yet, help her see how she can. And I hope this video has helped you all. Thank you all for your questions that in my inboxes that inspired this video. And no, I do live videos every Sunday on my business page. Please go like it if you haven't already. I talk about stuff like this, as well as how to use the practice of self-love to heal anything that you need to heal, to transform, to positively transform anything that you need to transform, and to manifest anything that you deeply desire. So until next time, you all, I love you. Now go love yourself. Bye.